Today's episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
All right, hi there. You are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and this is the show that I produce in Sydney, Australia. We do interviews with leading guitarists, and of course, we do our iconic album series where I am joined by my friends Rob Rhodes.
Hey, Matt.
And Gabor Josika.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Gabor.
Great to see you guys. This is the series where Rob, Gabor, and myself, we talk about some of the most iconic albums in our record collections. And we have at it. And before we kick into this episode's album, quick shout out to Anthony Gerber, lovely bloke who I met a couple of years ago. Just sent an email in saying he was loving the show, and he has created a Spotify playlist of all the albums that we've covered so far. So thanks heaps, Anthony.
Yeah, great work.
Very cool. We'll I'll stick that in a link. I'll stink a link.
I'll stink a link
into the show notes.
And Gabor can go back and listen to Van Halen and Cold Chisel albums to his heart's content.
Yes, finally.
He has burned those links. Yeah. All right, well, for today I'm going full classic mode. Jimi Hendrix. We're checking out his debut album, Are You Experienced, which was released in May of 1967. Hendrix, in his short but fiery career, he only recorded 4 studio albums, and there were a bunch of other live things, and there was some posthumous stuff, of course. And they're all killer, so I just thought, let's just grab the first one, because there's so much great stuff on there. Now, in this series, I've told you guys a few times, the first time I heard a lot of these artists, I guess the more classic artists, when I was a young guitarist, I didn't get so many of these bands because I was such a headbanger. If it didn't involve tapping and whammy bars, I didn't get it. So I'm almost embarrassed to admit, first time I heard Hendrix, obviously I knew the name, but I just did not get it. I didn't know why Hey Joe was that good compared to, I don't know, whatever Van Halen record I was listening to at the time or something. It seemed a little lame. But I did come around really quickly, actually. I think by the time I was 20, I had big Hendrix poster on my wall, and I was digging into the stuff, and it kind of made sense. So I don't know. There's something to be said for maturing. So we'll get into the record, but I'm interested in how you guys first heard of Hendrix, and if you were as dumb as me or you're far more cool. Gabor?
Well, this is another one of those where I'm going to get completely shunned by the guitar community. So this was my first time of almost listening to an entire Hendrix album. So I'm where you were in your, before you turned 20, in your teens.
Rob is speechless, I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just glad that I'm back at home for these recordings, because
you're not sitting next to me, because I think now he would have definitely murdered me. But
banished you from your own studio.
Yeah, so I mean, I knew of the hits. I think it's almost impossible to play guitar, anywhere from the 70s onwards and not know of the big hits. And I mean, this album has a lot of big hits on it. The Purple Hazes, the Manic Depressions, the Hey Joes, the Fires, the Foxy Ladies. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things, I never quite got it. It's like Matt was saying, I never quite got it. And so this was one of my first full listens. Not quite, because that's it. Were we going by the original recording, or were we going by the more recent releases that have like 10 extra songs on it?
Yeah, because there's the
like B-sides,
American release and the UK release, and the track listing's different.
Yeah,
and then there's the posthumous releases where they put all the original singles and B-sides.
That's it. So
tacked on and end up with 17 tracks instead of. Wait, I'll get the vinyl.
Yeah, because
I almost made it through all 17, but it didn't quite.
There's only 11 tracks on the original.
That's what. Yeah, because I looked on Wikipedia, and so I listened to the 11 that were on the original thing, but I didn't quite make it through all the 17. So I listen. Okay, so listen to an entire Hendrix album, then. Yes.
Yeah. No, solid effort, man.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob, you've got the record you were showing us before we hit record. Tell us about the LP you've got.
So this is the latest release, the stereo release of Are You Experienced? And it's got the US cover, which is the yellow with the pink and purple
it's awesome.
psychedelic type on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's the UK release, which is kind of like greeny grey with the three of them on the front. And yeah, I don't know. Hendrix for me, I've always been a massive Hendrix fan. So I think going back to all those TV shows, you would see Hendrix. But I think the actual first time I was in year 10 and I went to work experience in the city as a, wait for it, computer engineer.
Whoa.
And yeah. Anyway, you should have seen the computers in that place.
Yeah.
Bigger than a fridge. And I pretty much just changed tapes, like data tapes, and sent information. Awesome. And it was crazy.
This is 27 bytes.
Oh my God. So what was that? 1991. Uh-huh. And so I had been playing guitar for a year up until that point. And my mate had Band of Gypsies on vinyl. So we listened to that and smash hits. But again, it was just in the periphery. I wasn't really there yet. Yeah, we learnt Hey Joe in guitar class because it was an easy open chord changes and solo, in E minor pentatonic. But the guy I was doing work experience with, he gave me a couple of tapes on the second day. And one was Black Crowes Shake Your Moneymaker. And the other one was Hendrix Crossroads, which was another compilation. But the difference with that one is that it had a couple of the songs that came out after he died. So posthumous releases from Cry of Love. And I love that. And I wore that tape out. And then it was just a matter of, I pretty much bought every Hendrix record. Which is funny because on CD I don't have Are You Experienced. I thought I had it, but I've got it on vinyl, so that's a pass, right?
It's
a disc.
That's an A+, man.
Yeah, so Hendrix has always been big for me. Him and Clapton are the reason why I bought a wah pedal. And although I'm not a fuzz guy, so Strange, I love listening to it, and I love his tone. And to me, he's the quintessential middle pickup Strat player. And that's kind of my background with Hendrix. Just, love it.
See, I didn't even know he was a middle pickup guy.
Yeah, you can really hear it. It's that real woody kind of sound, He switches between a lot, but yeah, it's a lot of that, especially this record, there's a lot of that middle pickup.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So the track listing, Rob, what have you got on the vinyl there?
All right, so Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Hey Joe, Love or Confusion, May This Be Love, and I Don't Live Today is side one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then side two is The Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Third Stone from the Sun, Fox E Lady, and Are You Experienced?
Yeah, cool.
To close it out.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I listened to all them. Woo!
Yeah.
That's a solid pass too, Gabor. Serious. That's all good.
But then obviously, the things that weren't on there were the early singles and B-sides like Stone Free and etc. We'll get to those, I think.
Red House.
Red House, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how that stuff gets added, and I think over time, especially with streaming services too, often, you just get a whole chunk of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the original.
Because I thought back in those days there would have been a double album then for 17 songs, so that's why I looked it up, and
Yeah, for sure. So look, I guess a little bit of backstory on this. So Hendrix, obviously American, playing in America, but his solo career wasn't doing a great deal until he was discovered by Chas Chandler, the bass player for the Animals, who saw him in, I think it was 65 or 66. In September 1966, Hendrix arrives in England, and with Chandler, they get pretty busy putting a band together, getting Hendrix out there. There's some notable jams with Hendrix getting up with Cream, and just stunning everyone, including Clapton, side of stage, just freaking out. So there's some great stories like that. But so within a year of Hendrix arriving in England, Are You Experienced comes out. Axis Bold as Love is also released in 67.
Great record.
Amazing record, yeah. Like I said, I could have happily chosen any of them, especially the first three. They're just phenomenal.
So this was his first sort of official album, this one?
Long play, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Hey Joe and Purple Haze had been singles and had done really well in the UK. Not so much the States. The States took a little while to warm up to Jimmy, although they certainly would. But just a bit of context, in 1967, these are some of the albums that came out. And some of these bands were putting out multiple records that year. But there were new records by the Beatles, the Velvet Underground, Pink Floyd, Cream, the Doors, the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, the Four Tops, Tim Buckley, Traffic, Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin, the Mamas and the Papas, Albert King, the Monkees, the Bee Gees even had a record out in 67.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Was it Sgt. Pepper's 67?
Yeah.
That's Sgt. Pepper's, yeah.
Yeah. So I think another great story is that Sgt. Pepper's comes out, and a couple of days after it's out, Hendrix opens a gig with the cover, playing a cover of Sgt. Pepper's.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
And McCartney's there, like, just loving it because he was a huge Hendrix
And I think
fan.
he chose to play it on one of his first TV appearances too. He just, like, out of nowhere, they do it on a... I don't know, it wasn't Dick Cavett because that came later, but it was one of those earlier shows that just like Jimi Hendrix Experience launches and he decides, I'm going to play Sgt. Pepper's. Like, what?
You must love that song. Why wouldn't you? So, lots of hits, as we said. Hey Joe, Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, Wind Cries Mary, massive hits. And I don't know, the deep cuts, if you can call them that, I think they're all just as great. So Gabor, first time Hendrix record. What stood out for you?
Standout tracks. For me, probably standout track. I really like Manic Depression.
Yeah.
I liked it. Is it 3/4? Is it 6/8?
3/4.
3/4 because it's
Feels
hard
like
to hit.
three.
The drums are all over the place. It's hard to kind of hear where it sort of is. I liked it. I have a thing for odd time signatures, so that's one of the ones. Third Stone from the Sun, I really like. And I mean, aside from the big hits, there's Purple Haze, there's Hey Joe, Wind Cries Mary. They're all great songs. Foxy Lady, always love that. Fire.
Yeah.
I think I heard the Red Hot Chili Peppers version before I ever heard the Hendrix version, but Are You Experienced? The whole backwards thing, I like that.
Yeah.
But yes, so standout tracks, Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Hey Joe, Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Third Stone from the Sun, Foxy Lady, and Are You Experienced. They're probably the ones that stood out the most to me.
Sure. When you say Fire, so what was it? Who did you hear? The Chili Peppers version?
Chili Peppers did a cover of it. I think they released it was on an album. They had it on one of their albums. It was on either on Mother's Milk or the one before that. Is it the Uplift Mofo Party Plan or whatever it's called? It was on one of their albums. Either the one before Blood Sugar Sex Magic or the one before that. And they played it live a lot. And they used to have these kind of helmets on with fire and like on top.
Yeah, I saw him doing that.
And not much else on.
Yeah. Juxtaposition there.
And it was pretty much the Chili Peppers version was pretty much almost a note for note cover. So when I heard the original version, it was pretty much exactly the same. But yeah, I always liked Fire. Foxy Lady, that's the song I like it. I like the vibe of it. Wind Cries Mary is a beautiful song. You know, like the whole I don't get it. Again, I don't mean it in a way that I mean I get why Hendrix is Hendrix and why, you know, it's just not necessarily something I would listen to on a daily basis. But that's just, you know, that's me. But the hits and stuff, I mean, they're great songs.
Totally. I was going to say...
I need to... Rob's looking at me quite angry. So.
No, mate,
I'm joking.
All good. It's what taste is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mine's bad, so we all know that. So
if we all had the same taste, we'd all be listening to one band and everyone else would be ignored. So
exactly.
Variety is the space of life.
Exactly. I think the first time I heard Fire was in Wayne's World when... I can't remember the name of the band. Wayne's girlfriend's band.
Tia Carrere.
Yeah. What was that band called?
Oh, God, no, I can't remember that.
Anyway, but it was a good version of Fire.
Isn't Foxy Lady in that as well? Isn't that... I think Foxy Lady's in that too, maybe.
It's used as incidental music when Garth wants to talk to Kim Basinger or someone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's a bit shy, but then...
And then he kind of gets hit back against the wall. Yeah, that's right.
Swing. Yes, there you go. Rob, how about you?
Look, Manic Depression for me, it's always been one of my favorite songs to play live, and I'm probably going to mention a few cover versions throughout this podcast that people should check out too. And there is Seal and Jeff Beck do a cover of Manic Depression on that Stone Free tribute record. Yeah. And it's killer. And they do this little halftime breakdown, call and response thing in the middle. It's so good.
When I was looking at a lot of the stuff on YouTube, there was I think Lukather did a whole album of Hendrix stuff too. And there was some interesting stuff on there.
There's just so many great covers. But Manic Depression, man, how can you not fall for that immediately with that intro?
Yeah.
Straight
it's a cool riff. It's a really cool riff.
Relentless, yeah.
I think that and Crosstown Traffic, they're probably my two favourite Hendrix songs.
And there's some great covers of that one too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a different album, but just,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a killer riff, and the lyrics they fit perfectly with the chaotic nature of the music in that. Yeah. And the unison bends at the end of the solo and that big compound bend, like it's Hendrix. And then he just blazes, you know, like he's just starts out nice and measured and then away he goes. But still he just remains so melodic in that context, you know. And the spitting fuzz that's just like sounds like a speaker's about to give out.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot on that album. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
You like that
amazing. May This Be Love is another favorite. It's just Hendrix at his like sexiest. I love the floating, ethereal sort of nature of Jimmy's ballads.
Yeah.
Like they're just elevated somehow. I don't know how to describe it.
That's a great track, man.
The panning solo almost makes you feel like he's in the room with you, moving around.
Yeah. It's
you know, and you I was turning my head thinking I'm going to catch his ghost here somewhere. You know,
it's such a 60s psychedelic sounding album. Like it is so psychedelic 60s.
I think May This Be Love's got panning drums as well.
Everything is probably going well. Yeah,
and to think they did it all on a 4-track.
Yeah.
You know, 4-track tape machine.
Yeah.
Even though they're still a trio, there's just how they mix it. Fire. I love the sound of the snare in the verses in Fire. And that walking bass line in the chorus is just like genius.
Yeah.
And the doubled guitars in the solo. And I remember the clip. There was a video clip that Rhodes used to play, and it was this psychedelic, like watercolor rainbow thing. And you can't get anything Hendrix official on YouTube, so it's really hard to find that stuff.
I've noticed, yeah.
And Jimmy's playing and singing on Fire is really good. And then the bonus track. So the deal with the US and the UK release was that the record company so Chaz Chandler in the UK didn't want any of the singles on the UK release. But then the American record company went, well, these weren't hits there. They've got some legs, so we're going to put them on the US release. So that's why Stone Free, Highway Child, Red House, and all those sorts of things end up on the UK release and not the US release. So, but Stone Free, it has to be one of my all-time Hendrix favorite tracks.
Yeah.
It's super early in his career, and it's just he gets better and he gets more. His writing gets better, but there's just something about that song is amazing. And the cowbell, you can just hear, you can hear Christopher Walken in the background screaming, more cowbell. And the outro has that chromatic progression, the repeating bass line that becomes the intro of Third Stone from the Sun.
Yeah.
So, dun, 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 and then you can hear that in Third Stone from the Sun as well. And then Highway Child. Highway Child is just underrated, I think. Again, those unison bends, who doesn't love that? And Hendrix's trademark swagger on the vocal performance of that song.
Yeah, yep.
Just killer. And then how he changes the feel in the pre-chorus, and then back into kind of the halftime. And there's that middle pickup tone in the solo just on show there.
Okay.
And honorable mentions go to Red House. I think that's the quintessential version of that song.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can make a case for almost every song, but they're definitely the standouts for me.
That's cool, Rob. I dig Hendrix's singing. He is awesome, Rob. I'm glad you brought it up because, he's great. Remember, he's so soulful, man, on that.
The thing I noticed on this album, he does a lot of, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, baby. Yeah, baby.
And he hated his voice. He didn't think he could sing, but he sort of said, there's a quote where he said, well, I thought if Dylan can get away with doing what he does, I'd be okay.
Oh, he's a much better singer than Bob Dylan.
He's so expressive, man. Like he's guitar playing. He's constantly working the timbres and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Rob, I know living in the 70s, there's only really one legit 70s Hendrix record, but do you bust out much Hendrix stuff in that show? Like
for a little while we used to do Fire. And we did Stone Free as well. So we did early Hendrix because the whole thing with living in the 70s is like you were living in the 70s and that music from the late 60s was such an influence. It didn't just disappear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hence why we sneak into the 60s and we sneak into the 80s because some of the bands that started in the 70s didn't have hits, like bona fide hits till the 80s, 80, 81. So they're so popular. Yeah, and those bands and the fans of those bands know the first record that was out in 79 it's just like you can't you keep both the fans of those bands and the fans of the songs happy. But lately we haven't really done any Hendrix. I just looked at my analytics on Facebook today and it was I think 71.5% women. And women love to dance. So unfortunately the widdly, cool guitar songs sometimes make way for the songs that get girls on the dance floor.
I love your statistical insight. I know you get into it. It's cool.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with some more Jimi Hendrix. Are you experienced? This episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott, ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and the McNally Smith College of Music. I was one of the beta testers for the course and can say as a music educator, I was really impressed by the logical sequence of learning. The course has also been endorsed by players such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch. For more details, check out the links in our show notes. Okay, welcome back to the Iconic Albums series. I'm joined by Rob and Gabor, and we are talking about Hendrix's Are You Experienced?, the debut album from Jimi Hendrix, and the again, Rob, I'm going to ask you to pull out your album. Was the album called Jimi Hendrix, or was it called the Jimi Hendrix Experience?
The Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. On the back of it, it says, I should probably put my glasses on and turn some lights on in here, but
these old
anyway,
people.
let's see. So, by the way, I was the only one who didn't have glasses on, just for anyone at home.
Yeah, we're nerds.
So it says, be forewarned, used to be an experience meant making you a bit older. This one makes you wider.
Oh.
With the assistance of Mitch Mitchell on drums and Noel Redding on guitar, well, actually bass, but guitar as well, Jimi Hendrix breaks the world into interesting fragments, then reassembles it. You hear with new ears after being experienced. Those who've only seen him perform know only part of this experience. They rave about a young man who plays a guitar in more positions than anybody before him. Now, this debut album will put the heads on Hendrix's listeners into some novel positions.
Wowzers.
Be forewarned. Are you experienced? The one everybody's been talking about, the excitement of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. So that's what covers are good for, album covers.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? You don't get that on Spotify.
Yeah. Pitch pot.
That is perfect. I concur with all of that information too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Far out, man.
Far out. Hey, while we're talking about Noel Redding on guitar, aka bass, and Mitch Mitchell, shout out to those guys. How good are they on this record?
Oh, it's just, I don't know. How do you chart that? Like, honestly, any drummers out there?
Yeah.
Like, chart that. Oh my God.
Anyone whose first name and last name is basically the same. It's just cool.
Steve, they should do,
Steve
Mitch
Stevens
Mitchell
and
should
Mitch
be in a
Mitchell,
band
yeah.
with Steve Stevens. And Robbie Robertson.
Robbie Robertson.
You know? I can't think of any
Keep
more
going.
off the top of my head. Yeah, that was all right. We got two. Huh?
All right, we'll get a super group together. This is good.
Yes.
Yeah, nuts. I love, I mean, not just this record, but I mean, especially this record, but some of those freaking out 60s records where the drummers, they'll do a bar of feel and then a bar of fill, then a bar of the groove, then a bar filling out.
Yeah.
Like there's a fill every bar, basically. It's so good.
It's to me, like a lot of the songs, it was just drum solo. I mean, all three of them just solo, basically.
Yeah.
It's very it's definitely, the drums sound very 60s. The whole thing is very, very, you can put it into the 60s.
It's interesting. The tom sounds like a really high pitched. So they're open. Obviously, it sounds like there's no bottom skin, which is, typical for that era. But the toms are pitched so high. So it must be a jazz thing too. I'm not a jazz guy, but I feel like that high pitched thing, because he is a jazz guy, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
But it sits really well in the mix. And then when they phase it,
Yeah.
it works really well. Because I guess if the toms were tuned low, that phasing, flanging effect that they put on the drums from time to time isn't as effective.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it works in those high frequencies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
But then John Bonham, I think, tuned everything very low.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of that as well. And it worked, I don't know, it works for, I don't know. Yeah, but you're probably right, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, but the 70s was a whole different
recording,
Yeah.
the whole world. But yeah, everything was different, yeah.
To 60s, yeah. But yeah, I mean, all the tones are great. We're going to talk about Guitar Gear shortly, of course. But yeah, the tones, man, so good across the board. So favourite tracks for me, like we often say on this show, especially the albums we individually bring in, the whole record is obviously a big deal. But if I can put them into little categories, perhaps I do like the band. I do like the songs when the whole band is freaking out, like in Fire and I Don't Live Today. That's awesome. Third Stone from the Sun. The outro, the whole thing is like 7 minutes of just trippy jamming.
Yeah.
But that outro where it fades in and it fades out, then you hear Jimmy mumbling, then the band fades in again, and they're still just going nuts at the end of the tune. It's like the big rock and roll, and and all the feedback.
Yeah.
And then it fades out. You go, oh, that's it. No, comes back.
I wasn't sure if that was then, but it was then the full album version with him just talking kind of in the middle of it. I thought, am I listening to the proper full album version? But yes, I am. Okay.
Pretty much.
That's the 60s.
Yeah. So when Rob read the back of the album cover, that explained what was happening to me as I was listening to Third Stone from the
Okay.
It all makes sense. Are You Experienced all the backwards stuff? I think, Gabor, you mentioned that one.
Yeah.
That piano note, just pulsing one note all the way through. Cool, man. So cool.
Yeah, it's very Tomorrow Never Knows, the Beatles track. It was a bit of a nod to that, apparently.
Okay,
Because he was a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah, a lot of mutual respect there, hey? I know McCartney, I think he's often said his favourite player of that era was definitely Hendrix. But yeah, so many tunes. Wind Cries Mary is just beautiful. And the story is that was recorded in the final 20 minutes of a session. It was rehearsed and recorded in that little window of time. Hendrix had written it the night before. And just how beautiful are those guitars, the hammer-on chord voicings. We call that Jimi Hendrix style rhythm.
I mean,
playing
it's iconic. It's about speaking of iconic albums. I mean, that is about as iconic as it gets. He started a whole style of playing with that stuff.
Yeah, the combining lead rhythm.
Yeah, the lead rhythm player, the
melody thing.
Yeah, super cool.
Amazing.
Super cool. I think I'm just going to repeat other tunes you guys have already mentioned for probably the same endings. I Don't Live Today, again, another one where that's pretty heavy, that tune, actually.
It's a cool riff. I like that. That sort of, it's almost, it's a weird riff, but it's a cool riff.
Yeah, totally. And then the Foxy and Purple Haze, the super, again, the tones, they've just become part of the landscape for fuzz, hey? The Octavia in Purple Haze, of course, and just the fatness of Foxy Lady, that's nuts. And the Jimi Hendrix chord. So we've got Jimi Hendrix chord playing and the Jimi Hendrix chord.
Yeah.
I remember learning that at a guitar lesson. My teacher said, look, if you're talking to a jazz guy, it's a dominant 7 sharp 9, but just call it the Hendrix chord. Everyone will know what you mean. And he was right.
And it's a perfect chord almost set up for fingers.
Yeah.
How all your fingers fall, they just fall naturally into that chord. It's the most natural chord ever.
It's a weird chord. It's because it's a major minor chord. It has a major third, minor third in it, so you can play anything you want over it, which is, I guess, it fits into that 60s psychedelic vibe.
Yeah, man.
You can kind of go major, kind of go minor. They both kind of work.
Yeah. And in a functional harmony, Beato, functional harmony sense.
Beato. I just watched the new one last night, the Kravitz Bowl. My God.
I started watching that, the Kravitz Bowl.
Let's not go down that path.
No.
Let's keep on track.
Quick explanation. We're talking about what makes this song stink, which is a great YouTube channel. Please check it out. It's one of
What's
our
his name? Flannery, something like that.
Pat Finity.
Pat Finity. Yeah. Why this song stinks. Pat Finity.
Yeah. It's so good.
He's funny.
Highly recommended. Anyway, that chord, a 7 sharp 9, it's usually a 5. It's usually like a dominant 5 chord, but Hendrix makes it the 1 chord.
The 1 chord,
It's usually the really tense chord and it wants to pull back to the 1. No, he just does it for the chord 1. Just hammers it and owns it. It's the best. So good. Let's talk tones then, tones and guitars. So I'll give a quick overview of what I'm pretty sure was going on then, and then I'll get you guys to jump in because I know you've both got some.
Well, I think there'll be some fun facts with Rob coming up.
Stuff here, man. Absolutely. So, of course, Hendrix is famous for playing a CBS era Fenders, obviously flipped upside down. Here's the thing: everyone bags out the late '60s Fenders, and probably for good reason, because CBS quickly got into the penny pinching on those guitars, but no one complains about Hendrix's guitar tone.
Nah.
Funny thing that. Anyway, he made it work. So there's the flipped strats. I want to talk about the pickup too. That bridge pickup, that's the big deal, because obviously with the flipped guitar, I've never done this. I love playing strats. I'm a strat player, so I don't know why I haven't done this yet. Life's not too short not to have done this yet. Have you guys ever played, like a flipped pickup on a strat? Rob's not.
I haven't. No.
Rob's not. Gabor's nodding.
I am. I have the Ibanez Fireman.
Oh,
The
okay.
Paul Gilbert Fireman,
Yep.
and he put them the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's that way, and I think it makes more sense that way because you
Yeah.
get
It absolutely does.
you get a treblier sound on the bass strings and a bassier sound on the treble strings. So it makes more sense that way, really, if you think about it.
Well, we talked about that didn't we talk about that in the Chisel one as well? Because Mossy reverses it, and the fact that Leo Fender wasn't a guitarist, and that when you actually think about it, the tuning pegs are wrong as well because you want the shortest on the E and the longest on the low E because of the tension.
Right.
So you're creating more tension on a thinner string by stretching it out longer and tuning it up. So it should almost be the opposite, which it is on Nuno Betancourt signature models and reverse headstock Fenders. That's right.
He made a bunch of mistakes because he wasn't a guitar player. Because the whole vibrato tremolo thing.
Yeah.
Calling the thing on the guitar the tremolo and the thing on the amp a vibrato when it's really the other way around. So he did a lot of. He wasn't a guitar player, but we won't hold that against him.
No way.
I think it's Fender's 75th birthday, so shout out to our friends at Fender as well.
Happy birthday, Fender people!
And I did notice when I was shout out to Malula Bar Music that when I was in there that they've almost. I mentioned to the guys that it's like Fender have gone back to their roots. And they're selling the parts again. Like you can go and buy a black Fender body and a neck. And that was his original vision, Leo Fender, was to be able to do that they could just parts guitars together. And if something broke or didn't work, they could just call him up and I need another neck.
Yep.
And they'd just whack another neck on because that wasn't something you could do with the neck throughs and the, glue-ins of Gibsons.
For sure.
That, and it's really great that you used to only be able to buy licensed Fender parts or, Mighty Mite and Warmoth and whatever else, MJT lately. Now Fender's doing it and, maybe the licensing market isn't as lucrative as it used to be and that's why they've gone back to doing it. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, agree. And lots of people are building parts casters and all sorts of things too, so maybe they're jumping in on that too. So it's not a bad thing at all.
No.
Anyway, Hendrix made do with his upside down post Fender, post L series. Poor bloke having to play those guitars.
Poor guy, yeah. Jeez.
But once he started burning them, Fender were throwing them at him.
That's what I got to do.
They still survive too.
Yeah.
Dweezil Zappa's got one.
Yeah. There's a
that's cool.
couple of interesting videos about that. The whole, how it kind of came. He brought it back to life.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Because he found it under the stairs or something like that.
His dad had it.
His dad had it, and it was in bits. And anyway, interesting story. Yeah,
awesome.
Dweezil, man, what a childhood. We've mentioned him on a few shows.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, I might add.
Oh,
Ding, ding.
G'day, Dweez. I'll call him Dweez.
Okay, he's playing Marshall Plexis, the JMP 100. Fun fact that the late 60s Plexis, they started using EL34s, which I know for me that seems like the iconic Marshall tube, but moved from the KT88s. So there's some thought that was a bit more rockin' in that thing, and then quickly.
They break up more to 34s. To 88s, they have much more headroom, clean headroom.
Okay,
to 88s.
Fair enough. Pedals, it seems pretty sparse at this stage. So there's a Dallas Arbiter Fuzz Face, a Germanium one. There's a Voxoir, which he runs before the fuzzes. Curious. And then
because they're not buffered, so you got to.
Yeah. Oh, the Voxoir was not buffered?
I'm just being silly about the buffer thing with wires and fuzz.
No, but that's why he was so out of control with it, right? Because he was always wrestling the squawk and the everything. So I think years ago I read the Eddie Kramer book that he and and he talked about how he just experimented. So for one song, he'd put it one way and the other way, and he'd go, "Oh, that's what I want to hear." Or live, same thing, put it either way, just depending on how it sounded.
Yeah. I read this quote from Roger Mayer, who also built a bunch of stuff for him, who said in the studio they were doing all sorts of stuff like that they wouldn't do live. So putting EQs or extra drive stages before the fuzzes
Yeah.
So essentially what we're all doing these days, a
Yeah.
lot of us, stacking drives or boosting stuff before a gain stage or something. So there was talk of that as well. Now, I'm not sure if Mayer was talking about this record in particular or later on. The Octavia is on this record for most notably Purple Haze, but then other stuff like the Uni Vibe, that was, much later on. Well, a couple of years later on.
And early fun fact about the Mayer Octavia was that Roger Mayer meets Hendrix in a club in 1967, and within 3 weeks he's using Mayer's Octavia on the solo of Purple Haze. So that's how quickly it was done, handed to him, and he was using it and put it on a record.
Unreal.
Crazy. But yeah, they were, I know in the book Hendrix is quoted because Eddie Kramer is just a bit of a studio freak at this time. And he had a lot to do with how the record sounded, how Hendrix guitars sounded, the effects, all that sort of stuff, pre and post. And Hendrix would just go, I've got this sound in my head, I don't know how to get it. And he would explain, what is it? Well, I heard this dream, I was playing guitar underwater. And then Eddie Kramer would help him build that sound. And, someone would come in with a pedal, whether it was Roger Mayer or whatever, and they'd put this sound together as a whole sort of collective and then put it down, and Hendrix goes, that's it.
Wow. Wow.
So he had these ideas. He didn't quite have the skills to implement it. Yeah. So he had this team around him who could create those sounds. It was just, it's amazing to hear those stories.
Wasn't it a similar thing with in Crosstown Traffic and with the comb and aluminium foil? Because it's like a kazoo kind of thing. Wasn't it the same sort of thing with that?
Yeah.
Because he kind of heard it, and then I think it was Eddie Kramer who just said, let's just try this, or something like that. Because it was that, the classic albums or whatever, that TV show where they go back into the studios and listen to the isolated tracks and stuff. I think he was talking about that at one stage.
And I think originally they got that idea from Skippy and the gum leaf. That, I don't know. That could be. Could just be making that up.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you know that show, Gabor? Was that part
Skippy
of
the bush kangaroo?
Yeah.
What's that, Timmy? Timmy's in the well.
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, every episode started with him blowing on the gum leaf.
Yeah. It was great.
Oh, how did we get there?
Oh, sure. That's good though.
Stupid brain.
Any other gear stuff you guys want to talk about?
All right, so I've got this book which is amazing. It's a coffee table book called Jimi Hendrix Gear by Michael Wheatley, and the forewords by Roger Mayer. So, but it's got him with the white 64 Strat, which is his first Strat. Wow. The first Strat Jimi Hendrix played entered the country with him when he arrived at Heathrow Airport in September '66, albeit carried by a roadie, since he was entering as a visitor and wasn't officially able to work. So he wasn't able to carry the guitar on. So that's really cool. The instrument was purchased that May from Manny's Music in New York, with funds that he was given to by his girlfriend, Carol, Sherlocky at the time. The price of the new Strat was $289.
How many iconic instruments have been bought at Manny's in New York?
I know. It's insane, isn't it? And now Norms has picked up
Well, all those same
baton.
instruments are now Norms.
That's right. But yeah, the Marshall. So there's all like the Marshalls and even the pictures of the catalogs that existed at the time. Cool. There's interviews with Roger Mayer, how, but there's a whole thing on Are You Experienced? The studios, Olympic Studios. They went there because it was favored by the Stones. And Eddie Kramer and Chaz were there doing all of that. And it's a really great book for gear nerds. So, hello.
Cool, man.
That's me. That's us.
Yeah.
Comic book guy.
Yeah.
That sounds great,
and I
man.
think those Fender Custom Shop 69 pickups, I've tried, again, just trying to get that Hendrix tone. To me, the best pickup ever to to achieve that were the 69 custom shops. And I had the Abigail
I have a set of those.
wound ones like a long time ago. Wish I never sold them.
I have a set.
But
If you want one, I have a set that I just got out of a guitar because I put I had to put Fishman Fluence pickups in it. But I never liked them. I mean, okay, I'm not a Strat guy, but I never liked the 69 Abigail. So if anyone out there wants to buy a Fender custom shot with her signature on the back, Abigail Ibarra.
Wow.
I'm happy if the price is right.
Oh,
Well, I'm looking at Rob's face. I think Rob should get first dibs.
Rob,
and then,
you and me talk.
yeah.
Yes, well, it could happen. But yeah, I've got a couple of like old demos of originals that I've done that had that. I built a white Strat with a CBS headstock and a body and wired up everything and had the 69s in it. And I'm pretty sure I understand why you don't like it, because they're super open and transparent and really low output. So
They're very bright, I found. They're very sort of thin and bright.
Yeah, I don't know if I found that. I found that more than any other pickup, they bought out the sound of the guitar that they were in.
Okay.
So if it was, a big bodied, like big dense sounding piece of wood, then you just got like this dead. But if you had a really lively guitar, the pickups were lively, and it just gave you I had them in 2 or 3 different guitars, and they always sounded different, but it just sounded like that guitar. Like, when it was unplugged, you heard the character come through the pickups, which I thought really amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome, man. Hey, you got any fun facts, Rob?
All right, so we've done a couple of fun facts. We did the Roger Mayer one, and we did the different album covers and the tracks. And Gabor mentioned the different Foxy lady spellings.
She's not just Foxy, she's Foxy.
So Foxey, so Foxey, was for the American release, and Foxy, Foxy, was for the UK release. So, that's a little.
The Americans
fun fact
usually
there.
take letters out. They don't add.
Or they just replace them with a Z.
Or with a Z, yeah.
Oh, is
Or
Z or a Z?
It's a Z.
Oh, my
With a
God.
Z.
Sesame Street. Yeah,
Gonna get calls. The Hendrix version of Hey Joe omits the first verse where Joe buys the gun.
Oh,
So in the original, there's a first verse goes, "Hey Joe, where you going with that money in your hand? Chasing my woman, she's run off with another man. Going downtown to buy me a 44." So that's the first verse. So in the original, that verse is in there, but most pre-Hendrix, so that verse is in most pre-Hendrix versions, but almost never in any post-Hendrix cover versions of the song.
Okay.
So the cover's usually of the Hendrix one. There's one notable cover of this song by Deep Purple. So Deep Purple Mark 1 on Shades of Purple, I believe the album was. It's like this epic, crazy intro before it goes into almost like a Hendrix version of the song. But it's this big classical,
wow.
it's so Deep Purple, like it's insane. But it's this big 2-minute intro before it goes into the slow version. So, Purple Haze, Jimmy and producer Chaz Chandler used some unusual studio tricks to get the unique sound of that song. So, to create the background track that sounds distant, they put a pair of headphones around a microphone and recorded it to get that echo effect.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's really...
On his vocal or?
Just on the track. So, it just said to get some distant... It must be in the outro or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then when the recording went to Hendrix's American label, they had to put a note on it that said, "Deliberate distortion, do not correct." So I thought that was really cool.
That's awesome. That's
and finally, just some really cool covers for people to check out. So, Robert, I'm almost going to go down the album track listing here, but Robert Randolph and the Family Band do an amazing cover of Purple Haze.
He's great. He's killer. Robert Randolph.
Yeah. I mentioned the Jeff Beck Seal version of Manic Depression. That's killer. Wind Cries Mary in the soundtrack of The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. There's Richie Sambora does a cover of The Wind Cries
Really?
Mary.
Wow.
Okay.
And in the solo section, it blows out into the riff version of the outro of Hey Joe, which is
Okay.
that's killer. Hendrix, the Stone Free, so that cover album, the tribute to Hendrix. There is The Cure do a version of Purple Haze as well, which is amazing. It's so good. Very
I can't
atmospheric.
imagine that, but yeah, okay. I can't imagine how to Cure with two Purple Haze. But.
I think you'd absolutely love it, man. It's on this like little electro loop, and it's very atmospheric. It's great. Also on that album, Clapton does Stone Free. That's a really good version of that. And check out Living Colour's version of Crosstown Traffic. That's not on this record. I kind of snuck off with that one. But they're just some Hendrix covers to check out just to see how people reinterpreted some of those songs.
Yeah, nice, man. Very cool.
Oh, there's a good cover. The Wood Brothers. Is it Angel? Is it Angel? Is there a song called Angel?
Yep.
There's a song called Angel, isn't it? It's not on
that
this
song,
album.
Cry of Love.
But the Wood Brothers, I don't know if you heard of the Wood Brothers before, but they're check out the Wood Brothers. They're actually really good. Great guitar player, great bass player. He plays in a band called Medeski, Martin and Wood, which is sort of like a jazz improv band from New York. Anyway, him and his brother do a thing called the Wood Brothers, and they do a really good version of Angel.
Yeah, nice.
I just remembered that.
Awesome. I'm going to find out the name of the band in Wayne's World.
Google. See? Where was Google? But everybody's done a version of I Don't Live Today too. There's a great version that Paul Rodgers does, and I think he does that with Jeff Beck. And Kenny Wayne Shepherd band do I Don't Live Today as well, live
awesome.
a lot. And he's got a new live record out that came out this year, and I think they do a cover of it on that too.
Crucial Taunt.
Yes, news just in. Tia Carrera's band in Wayne's World was called Crucial Taunt.
What a terrible name for a band. No wonder they never made it.
Maybe. All right, I reckon that's done us for Hendrix's Are You Experienced? Great record. Great conversation, fellas. Thanks so much.
Yes. Sorry, people out there.
Thanks for bringing it and torturing Gabor with it.
Always fun to torture Gabor with some classic rockin'. Guys, thank you for joining us on the Guitar Speak podcast. This has been our iconic album series. Please check out our back series. There's another 20 or so of these. And of course, the interview show. My thanks to Fretboard Biology for sponsoring today's episode as well. My name is Matt Wakeland. You've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, and I always love to leave you with the words from German rocker Michael Schenker, but maybe Gabor or Rob might like to kick us off with it this week. Michael Schenker once told me to
keep rocking keep on rocking.
See you next time.
Ciao.
Oh, I always love that at the end of the podcast. Keep rocking and keep on rocking.